children, and welcome to my chamber. My name is Rotherick Gastblood, and I'm your host of Tales from the Dark Chamber. This week, we have a great show for you. Tales to make your skin crawl. Each week, my chambermate and I read a scary tale that we found on the internet, or perhaps left under some corpse. Either way, we think you're going to like it, and we're just dying for you to hear it. So sit right back, light a candle, and let's have a ghoul evening. Woody, where have you been? It's almost story time.
Well, I had to go to the doctor today.
What on earth for?
I don't know. See, this rash on my arm.
Looks normal to me.
You mean a large black weeping lesion on your skin? Red lines running from it and a smell that could gag a maggot doesn't concern you?
Do I look like a large black weeping lesion with red lines and a peculiar smell would concern me? I'm a ghoul. I dig up corpses with the perfume of decomposition that would curl your hair.
Well, Rotherick, I'm a normal person, you know.
Oh, stop flattering yourself. Can't you see that these types of ailments are completely harmless? Let me see. Yes, I see. See? Nothing to worry about.
Rotherick, my arm is numb and my head is swimmy. Wait
a minute. What did you have for lunch?
Burrito.
You ninny. You spilled the hot filling on your arm. Beans, tomato, salsa, and fajita seasoning. I don't know what that oozing is, but it looks tasty.
Hey, right there, mister. Give me my arm back.
So what's our story about tonight?
Oh, yeah, it's a great one. This is the beginning of a series about a young man who, well, let's say a rose by any other name is not a rose. Tonight's story is What the Hell Pricked Me? Part 1. What the Hell Pricked Me? Part 1 by Sunfred. I loved walking. I loved walking in the woods in particular. Some people found this weird, but there was something soothing and intellectually boasting for me from this experience. Soothing in the sense that it liberated me from my many stresses, and I learnt that I did some of my best thinking when I took these walks. For as long as I can remember, I had enjoyed ambling about aimlessly in the woods. When I moved out of my parents' house, I found a flat in a suburb which was close to the edge of a city 6 hours away from my hometown. This suburb is quite close to a wooded area filled with innumerable teak trees and tall brown grass. These woods aren't like the creepy woods you often hear about in horror stories. There are no roaming vengeful spirits, no wandering murderers, no tearing wild animals. It's been over 3 years I've lived here in this area, and I have never heard of anyone who was robbed, assaulted, murdered, or attacked by a wild animal in these woods. Teenagers often smoke weed, drink beer, or have sexual encounters in that forest. In fact, a number of families often go camping in those woods, and nothing uncanny ever happens. This was the reason I loved this forest. I say loved because my perception of these woods have since changed because of something that happened to me a while back. I had taken a leave of absence from work for a couple of days. I work for an advertising company. I love my job, but it's often stressful. One of our biggest clients wanted a commercial that would get people excited about shopping in their stores for the upcoming holidays. I was put in charge of coming up with this commercial. I had come up with several ideas, which were all rejected by the client. "They don't have any spark," were the exact words that the client used to berate my ideas. My boss was giving me one more shot before he found someone else to work the commercial. That had me worked up, so I asked for a couple of days off work to clear my head and think of new ideas. I figured a couple of walks in the woods would help me come up with the imagination I needed to come up with something to knock the socks off this client. As I said, walks in the woods helped me think better. I only had 2 days off, so I knew I had to make the most of them. It was on the first day of my leave when I had an experience that would turn my life upside down. I woke up early in the morning, prepared and ate my breakfast before heading out for my walk. I enjoyed walking in the morning, when it's not too hot to make me sweat or too cold to make me consider going back into my flat with every step I take. I also noticed most people enjoy jogging in the woods during this time. Of course, I could have joined them, but I'm the type of guy who only runs if I'm being chased. I never changed routes when I took my walks, so on that particular day, I took the same dusty footpath I always take. This was to ensure that I don't end up getting lost, since this commercial idea was stressing me out, and I was afraid I might lose track of where I was going. I remember that morning like it was yesterday. The sun shined brightly, the sky was clear blue, birds chirped from the treetops, and there was an idyllic peacefulness in the forest, which warmed my heart. It was a perfect morning, unlike the other days I would dump into the Jehovah's Witnesses. I didn't care much for religion, but these people always wanted to shove it down my throat. I walked deeper into the woods with the commercial on my mind until I realized the number of joggers who passed me dwindled. I remember the last jogger to pass me was a tall, beautiful blonde who had her long hair tied in a tight ponytail. She had green eyes, high cheekbones, thin lips, and gorgeous smooth skin on her face, which was unfortunately draped with sweat at the time. I had seen her before in my apartment building. She lived a floor above me, if I'm not mistaken. "Oh, hi," she said surprisingly, stopping next to me. "We live in the same flat, right?" "Hello, yes we do. I'm Stanford," I bashfully replied as I extended my hand to greet her. I was also very eager to have physical contact with her. "I am Candace. Nice to meet you. I like your haircut," she says. "It really brings out your eyes." She giggled as she shook my hand. I blushed as I thought of a compliment to give her as well. Thank you. I like your tight sweatpants. They really bring out your butt." I regretted these words as soon as they left my mouth. Candace frowned and said, "Okay, I'll see you around," which I assumed was a nice way of saying, "Talking to you was a mistake because you're a pervert as hell. I am out of here." With these words, she resumed her jogging. As you can guess from that encounter, I was not good with women. That was why I was single, lived alone, and hadn't had a girlfriend in ages. It wasn't because I am hideous or anything, but I was down to the fact that I was awkward around the fairer sex. I first noticed it in high school because a lot of the girls used to keep me at arm's length. When I cornered one of these girls to tell me why, she said it's because of my grotesque conversations and actions. I somehow always said and did inappropriate things when around girls, and this repelled them. My one and only friend back then, Craig, used to joke with me that when I grow up, I could be hired by celebrities to fend off their groupies with my awkwardness. I'm still not sure if this is a real job. However, during college, I brushed up a bit on my charm and I got into a few relationships, but they all ended quicker than they started. As an adult, my curse of being strange around women returned to haunt me. Anyway, when Candace ran off, I began pondering on my anathema with women. I had all but forgotten about work and the commercial. That was when a foul stench snapped me out of my thoughts. The Mephistus was so revolting, it turned my stomach. My eyes darted around where I was standing because I was curious on what could be giving off such an unpleasant smell. Just off the footpath and deep in the midst of a copse of brown grass, I noticed a sparkle, and then another, and another. I moved towards the sparks, and the smell got worse. If you can imagine the farts of a group of people who just ate one too many boiled eggs, then you have a pretty good idea of the pong which offended my nostrils at that time. I soon realized the sparkling came from a bed of roses, which was somehow planted deep in the forest, surrounded by weeds and tall brown grass. The roses were very peculiar, but beautiful. I thought they were artificial. They all had bright red stems with matching thorns and ebony black petals. The petals glistened as if they were sprayed with glitter. The rose garden was at least 10 meters wide and 15 meters long. I had never seen roses like that before. Even though they reeked to high heaven, they were a treat for the eyes. I couldn't help but wonder, who planted the roses there? I never heard of anyone who lives in these woods. There was also not a house or any form of residence in sight. Could it be a hobo who has a passion for gardening? I thought. Before I knew it, I was reaching out for the petals of one of the roses with my right hand. I felt a sharp pierce on my index finger as soon as I made contact with it, and I snatched my hand back. I took 2 steps back and looked down at my hand. Blood was exuding out of my finger. The pain of the prick was unbelievable. It felt like 100 bees had stung me on the same spot. I sucked on my finger to stop the bleeding and walked away from the roses. My finger hurt so bad that I decided to go back home and put some ice on it. But the pain receded before I reached my flat. The bleeding had also stopped, so I decided to spend the rest of the day at home. I convinced myself that I would think about the commercial during my tomorrow walk, and I spent the whole day relaxing, watching TV, playing video games, and browsing the internet. It was only when the sun went down that the pain returned to my finger. I was seated on my couch, drinking a beer, watching TV, when I felt a sharp sting on my index finger, just like when I was initially pricked. I looked down at my finger and realized that it had swollen. A small but visible black circle had formed on the exact spot I was punctured. I placed a bag of ice on my finger, but the pain only got worse. I went back to my bedroom to get my first aid kit box, but things became weirder. As I sat on my bed scouring the first aid box for something to alleviate the pain, I noticed lines began to flow from the small circle to the rest of my palm. The pain was unbearable. I could feel these black veins course their way through the whatever muscles, nerves, and tissues which lay beneath the skin of my palm. The lines were vibrating with every moment, causing my hand to twitch uncomfortably. Within seconds, my entire palm was black as gunpowder. These strange black lines snaked their way onto the other side of my hand and flowed all the way down to my fingertips, causing all 5 of my fingernails to pop off and clatter to the floor, leaving a layer of red, exposed, bleeding skin. I shrilled in pain and could only hear my neighbor banging on the wall for me to keep it down. The veiny line slithered up my arm, and it felt like the offspring of barbed wire and shards of glass was moving under my skin. My whole hand turned as black as coal when the lines reached my shoulder, and my entire body began to feel scorching hot. I pushed away the first aid kit box from my bed and screamed some more as I felt the lines make their way into my chest. Sweat was cascading from my head like a waterfall, and my heart was beating wildly against my chest as I realized I may be about to die. I jumped up from my bed when I felt a cold hand touch my rapidly throbbing heart. I tore off my shirt and noticed the black veins had engulfed my chest. I slammed my body against my 6-foot-tall mahogany bookshelf as I felt the hand squeeze my heart. Then I noticed only one book fell from the bookshelf. It was the Bible. Dust wafted up from the holy book as it hit the floor. As I said, I was not big on religion, and the only reason I had this book was because my mother forced me to take her Bible with me when I moved out of the house. I fell to the ground and clutched the book with my right hand so I could say a prayer and hopefully gate-crash my way to heaven. There is something about being on the verge of dying that makes you a believer. I shrieked like a mountain lion when I touched the Bible. It felt like I touched a hot stoveplate. Worst of all, I couldn't let go. My hand was stuck on the Bible. A loud screeching noise erupted from God knows where. It sounded like the raspy cry of an old woman who is a chronic smoker. It was so loud that I feared my ears would start bleeding. It was as if the screaming was coming from within my ears. From the noise of the screams to the pain in my hand and my chest, my body finally gave out, and my vision became blurry before I closed my eyes, expecting that the next time I open them, I will be at the pale gates being waved into heaven by St. Peter. Of which this was crazy thinking because I had never ended up saying that prayer. When I did open my eyes, I was still in my room. Streaks of sunlight pierced through my silky blue curtains. After recovering from my grogginess, I sat up and realized that it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon the next day. I was almost happy that it was all a dream, until I saw my fingernails scattered on the floor. I gasped and stood up as I stared in horror at the dried blood on the edge of my fingers where my nails should be. The black veins had disappeared from my hand and chest. My right hand felt limp, but at least the swelling on my index finger had gone down. I also noticed the Bible on the floor next to my plucked-out fingernails. The red, New King James Version Bible was covered with a black slime that was wobbling like jelly. The odor which oozed out from the gunk was the same as the fetor from the roses I saw in the woods. After throwing up several times in my toilet, I couldn't stop asking myself, what the hell pricked me? What the Hell Pricked Me, Part 1. Join us next week when we read Part 2. What the Hell Pricked Me, Part 1. By Well, folks, that's our story tonight. Rothrick and I hope you enjoyed it. We sure had a great time bringing it to you, and we really appreciate you listening. Tune in next week when we bring you another chilling tale from the Dark Chamber. And just a note, if you're an aspiring author and you want your story read here on Tales from the Dark Chamber, send us a note at talesfromthedarkchamber@gmail.com. If it creeps old Rothrick out enough, we'll air it. And subscribe to our podcast for notification of our next new episode, or subscribe to our YouTube channel at Tales from the Dark Chamber and follow us on Instagram or Twitter. If you want your story read for your own use, or you just want to have it, check out my website at woodygvoiceover.net. You can order there, or you can find me on Upwork as Woody G. And again, thank you for listening tonight.